Welcome to Inspired Artist Podcast with me, Porter Singer. Nicholas Bulka is a Savannah-based, Maryland-born multi-instrumentalist producer inspired by classical, rock, and electronic music. His album Tease is a collection of meditative experiences to calm your soul, and that's how I discovered him. I discovered a track, Chamomile or Chamomile. We can love to hear how you pronounce that. On Spotify, and so invited him for a conversation. So let's get into it. Here we go.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So is it chamomile or chamomile?
It's funny that you asked that. DTO, my collaborator, asked the same question when he was pronouncing the word, and I said, well, I say chamomile, but I'm not sure. Everyone I think that I've heard in reference to the track has said chamomile, but I've also heard chamomile now that I think about it. So to me, it's chamomile, but to each her own.
I think it's not a southern thing to say chamomile, like chamomile tea. Isn't that?
Could be.
Am I making?
I,
Well,
I
because you're
haven't
from the
had
South.
chamomile.
No.
I haven't had chamomile tea with anyone in the South.
Okay.
But I have in Maryland, and I guess my mom says chamomile. She's from West Virginia, so there's a little bit of an accent there too. And I think I've picked up some bit of an accent even in the 10 years that I've been here. Just kind of a chameleon of where I'm living. So
Are you in
West
Virginia now?
No, I'm in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, you're okay.
My mom,
Savannah-based. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Currently.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what based means. Yes. I'm getting it. Do you like Savannah? I've heard Savannah's cool.
Savannah is cool. My wife and I fell in love when we visited here. She got a job out of college in the Low Country across the Talmadge Bridge, which leads to South Carolina, which is just like 35-minute drive. So we were living in South Carolina for a little bit after college, and then we moved to Savannah when we visited enough that we were like, we need to live there because there's more going on, and very interesting culturally, little bubble in the South.
Like college towny kind of, right?
Art school, kind of hippie town.
Yeah.
It's really, it's got a lot going on in the art scene, so it's got its own flavor.
Cool. Well, speaking of chamomile or chamomile, what was the why tease? So it's tease, Teas, not like I'm
Yes,
teasing you, but tease. Just
right.
for anybody just who's listening to it. What was the like? I think that's such a cool idea. I was listening to it the other day. It's like green, black. Ooh, is it oolong? There was a
Yeah,
couple others,
that's
right?
right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what
Yerba
was the
mate.
inspiration there?
So chamomile was the inspiration because I had that song on a different album. Uh, the first album I put out on Spotify was more psychedelic rock based, and I actually took that down for this release because it's not really in line with the brand that I'm going for with my music these days. So, but that song was bless you. That song
I
was
mute it.
it, it got a lot of good feedback. I got a lot of good feedback from that track when I was still trying to figure out my style. Still trying to figure out my style to this day, but I think that the instrumental ambient music that has a lot of room for interpretation is an area that I want to keep exploring. So I got good feedback from the song Chamomile that was originally on that first psychedelic rock album that was called Trampoline Dreams. And so I did a whole teas album based off of the idea that maybe there are different flavors of tea that lend themselves to different headspaces. spiritual journeys, however you want to approach that. And so I re-released Chamomile for a second time on the Tease album with no edits. It was just copied, and then the other songs were created in the same um, general style. And so then Chamomile also was the song that DTO liked the most, I think, from the Tease album. So it ended up getting released a third time with his take on it, which is beautiful.
Oh, okay. So how did you meet him?
Through a music service called the Producer Dojo.
Oh,
I was introduced to, or I heard an interview with Kristen, who goes by the name Dream Tonic, and she did a collaboration with DTO before I did, but she spoke highly of him and his willingness to work with other artists. So I reached out over Instagram and just sent him. I just basically cold called and sent him my Tease album because I listened to his music and I realized there was some overlap. And I didn't really expect to hear much back, to be honest. But he sent me back good feedback, and he even mentioned, I think, specific tracks. So we just continued the conversation from there, and it ended up becoming a collaboration.
cool. That's neat. I collaborate with a couple of people, and one of them I also met through Instagram. It's a
Yeah,
great networking for musicians. I feel like because I think if you're more in the corporate world, maybe LinkedIn is a little bit better for for those types of things. But yeah, if you're creative, then I really love Instagram as a tool for connecting creative people.
definitely.
Yeah. So when you were talking about your style, which is interesting to me, do you feel the need to like nail down a style because you need to be able to describe what you do, or is that just sort of part of the artist journey for you? Like that's going to be your motivation or your inspiration is to like find a style and through this you will create kind of thing, or what's that? Well, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that um, being an artist and a musician, you pull from a lot of different influences. For me, the hardest part of the process is figuring out what elements not to use in my music because I have so many influences that um I just can't include them all and have one consistent brand or identity or message. So I am constantly trying to whittle down the sounds that I use. Even on Tees, there's a lot of different drum patterns and sounds, and one of the consistent elements there is a particular plugin that does some reverb processing, which might be a little bit technical, but it maintains that consistent, I think, feeling of sort of an artificial space, but also one that feels warm. Um, and so that is kind of the common factor in that album. But yeah, it's always been difficult for me to really cut out some of the more strong influences, be it and every style of music from jazz, classical, hip hop, rock. I have different tracks in those styles as different identities. But I think the one that is most authentic is the one that I'm releasing under my government name, which is a little bit less um, less aggressive, very chill music that I'm comfortable just having out if any employer were to Google me. it wouldn't be some crazy music or anything like that. So it feels the most authentic right now, that style of tease.
Hmm. What is your process for beginning an instrumental track like that or an electronic music track?
Yeah, I love that question. And I want to hear your answer to that too after I give mine. Um, I I begin usually with a chord progression. So I'll write on the guitar or piano, and then I usually slow it down. So I'll pull it into the DAW and get the MIDI pattern. I like to write on an instrument, but then transpose it all or compose it all in a piano roll. Um, First, I will
Why
pull it
is that?
into.
You like to read it as you go along when you make the other parts, or what?
Yeah. So if I'm playing chords on the guitar, I know roughly the notes in that chord, and I can revoice them on the piano in Logic. But the fun part becomes when I can switch out the underlying instrument
Hmm.
and put a lot of effects on it. So I'll get like a pad or a synthesizer that takes the place of the piano, maybe add some guitar later with the same chord and same melody notes. And then from there, I throw it through a lot of reverb for the sound of T's and a lot of echoey sounds to build a sort of atmosphere. Um, and I like to uh, approach it with several tempos that are going on at the same time.
Hmm.
So the bass will be really holding down the whole notes. Um, but then maybe there'll be some polyrhythm in the other melodic instruments, piano or guitar, so that the listener can sort of lose focus on any one particular voice and have them all speak in a conversation that sort of uh, is more collective rather than any one instrument really taking the stage. And in that way, it's different than maybe like a band with a singer, where the singer is the focus, and
Hmm.
that's the whole point. Uh, a lot of music has a focus, one main character that can switch throughout the different instruments. But with my music, I like to create, at least in this style of tease, I like to create sort of um, a mystery of the main character and let each voice provide a little piece of the puzzle to the whole track. And so for you, how do you compose from the
Yeah.
start?
Well, that's interesting. I've never composed anything strictly instrumental. I don't think. No. Um, so the idea of having like sort of a dilution of main characters, I really like that concept because that would be meditative and I'd never for some reason I'd never really registered that as like an important characteristic of that type of music. So that was really interesting. That's funny that I've never really thought about it in those terms. Um, I suppose different than like if you were going to be guiding someone in a meditation and then you would like have a main voice to do that. But basically with your music, you're just sort of allowing focus to get really general as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
like really singular and focused, which uh, can be really helpful if you're having a stressful a stressful moment or just to relax your nervous system. Anyway, um, so let's see. I would I have different ways of creating music, but if I'm sending something off to say Mons, who's my collaborator in Sweden, um, I would probably write something on piano or harmonium and then I would like just do really basic chords and do the voice over it and then just send it over to him, and then he magically sends me it's it's like I feel so spoiled. It's so amazing. He just sends me like an orchestrated piece of music that I then get to sing along to. So I get to do karaoke. But that's basically my process in that. I don't do a ton of I used to do a lot of piano playing, but I'm mainly just focused on voice now and letting other people be virtuosic in their instruments, because although I love playing it, yeah, it's not like I don't know, maybe one day I'll have the time that I used to practice piano, but at this time it seems like my attention is better served on creating new stuff and using my voice, and then just letting people who, because like Monce's main instrument is piano and he is a much better pianist than I am, so might as well have him do, you know, the the yeah. Anyway, so
There's
yeah,
only so many hours in the day, and it does definitely helps to specialize in what you're good at. And also I've found that collaborating opens up so many ideas that you wouldn't explore on your own. At least for me, when I send something to my friends in Maryland or anyone that I'm collaborating with, like literally anyone, they do something that I wouldn't think to
yeah,
do.
yeah. Yeah, that part is super cool. And if you can have that trust with somebody, like, you knew with DTO that you like his music, so you were expecting to get something that you were going to like back, I assume. That's always nice too, is you develop like a relationship with somebody, and then you know that it might I sometimes I'm like, I have no idea, and what he comes up was like, whoa, that's out of left field, like I was not hearing that, but I love it, so great. Yeah.
Yes. That's a great feeling too, because you feel like someone's in on your secret before the rest of the world has heard it.
Mhm.
You're vibing same kind of energy, and then together you can sort of grow this like plant into something that you're proud of.
Yeah, I like that. That was a lot of analogies. Plant secret, I love it. um yeah, yeah, it is like, it's a weird sort of it's a weird sort of communication, I guess, because do you find this like, once something is sort of created with my song, then I can't hear it any other way anymore. Like, it's
Oh,
that
yeah.
must have been
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Definitely. I think, yeah, the ear and the mind are very tricky in the sense that sometimes when I'm mixing, and I didn't realize this for a long time, and going back, I heard the term ear fatigue, but I didn't realize what it really meant. I always thought that ear fatigue was just like you need to turn the music down because your ears are going to get damaged physically or something. I didn't realize that ear fatigue was like you start to hear something enough and it sounds right and you love it, and I think that it can get really um hard to hear things with fresh ears. I always look forward to the morning after I do music because I I hear the next morning when I wake up and I hear the track that I worked on the day before. I've got like the parts that are working and aren't working, all like I hear it differently than the day before, and so I like cherish that first listen the next day, um, because it does sound right. It sounds like like that's how the song is supposed to sound, and it's just amazing all the mental gymnastics that the brain can go through to really be like to become habituated to a sound. And I don't think that's bad. I think it's a very cool effect. I think that when it sounds right and you hear it a lot, it becomes an experience that you have with the track. It's why your favorite music is your favorite music, and it stays with you for a long time because you hear something enough and you're gonna like it.
Yeah. I was listening to some sort of study they did to that effect that was like everything it's called something. There's some like name for the formula, but everything has to be like just this much new, like it was some
Mm.
percentage, like this much new with this much familiar. There's like the right quote, what do you call a fraction? The proportions. It has to be like the right proportion, new to familiar, and then things do really well. But if it's too new or too familiar, it doesn't.
Yeah, it can become overwhelming to to try to get your feet in context
Yeah. Yeah.
to really understand where how the change fits in with the previous bars of music.
Yeah.
So having that ratio, yeah, and I think that's one of the closest.
Ratio. That
um
was the word I was looking for. Thank you.
yeah, the ratio, when the ratio is right, um it sounds new but old at the same time,
Mm. Yeah.
or like that's the only way it could have gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like you you must have had the experience of sharing something you've been working on with somebody and you can totally hear where this thing is going, but the person's like, I think this sounds kind of bad. And you're like, no, no, this isn't the finished thing. Can't you hear? Like, no.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things I learned through the dojo, which I think I mentioned earlier, is the mix is the medium of translating your ideas. So I've used to always I'm still getting trying to get better at mixing, because to me, I usually just listen on headphones and it sounds right to me, but then when I play my music on a PA, it's the treble is low and the bass is just overwhelmingly high because I'm mixing on headphones and wasn't really aware of that. So there's some tricks that I've learned to fix that, but being able to really um, dial in how your sounds will translate across mediums has been like super, has helped me level up a lot, because people then who don't have the same headphones or who are listening through monitors or expensive PA system or whatever they're listening through, they'll get it, well, more likely they'll be more likely to get it than they would if I had optimized for my own hearing, which is sometimes interesting because it doesn't sound as good to you as it could in the in the headphones that you're using at the time, but it sounds better to a larger percentage of people.
Mm. Yeah. Well, you mean like because most people are listening through like their AirPods or through
Right.
phones, they're
You can't,
using,
it's
yeah.
there's so many devices that you just have to, like, it's almost a guessing game. You just have to reference with different tracks and check on so many different kinds of speakers, and especially AirPods, they're so popular,
Hmm.
and especially a big PA, because you never know when someone's going to put it on a big PA, and that can be really unflattering if you haven't listened to it there, and there's just one really loud frequency, it'll get amplified a lot. So I've had that experience before, and so I'm trying to just remember that who is the music for? Is it for me and my headphones, or is it for everyone else to have a good experience listening to it? And that was an important realization.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, it just makes me think of how impossible it really is to like make it so that everybody's going to hear something the same way. It's sort of like you can use the best words to explain your point, but there's still going to be like a percentage of people who don't understand what you're talking about because they're not ready to hear it. And it's like you can have them listen on their homes, but like the thing that just boggles my mind about speakers is that everybody can adjust their speakers. So you might decide that there was too much treble, but the person who's going to listen to your track is going to turn it all, it's like
It's true. It's subjective.
give me more bass or whatever it is. So um I was listening to a track. I was trying to have my partner listen to something that I had done, and I was like, just listen to it through I had AirPods actually. It's like just listen to it with the AirPods. Like, why don't we listen to it on our speakers are just the TV like speakers, so we can do it through the. And I started listening. I was like, no, oh my gosh, no, like to put it back in the AirPods. This is not what. Yeah, this is not the right speaker situation. But yeah.
Yeah. It's so tricky. I wish I was better at that part of production, but I'm working through that.
Yeah, I don't think that I mean, is that something that we can really get around? Like that's just sort of that's the nature of creating music these days. Like some people are going to listen to a really lo-fi version of your track as an MP3 from some website, and some people are going to, want the wave file, and some people are going to listen to it on an amazing PA system, and some people are going to listen to it through their phone speaker, like
Yeah, this is not really something you can perfectly solve for. I think there are definitely some ways to mitigate just a really poor like frequency response, but for the most part, you're right. It's just luck of the draw.
yeah, yeah, well, the right people will have the right equipment to listen to your music. It'll all work out.
And that's a great point because often there is a particular setup or standard for a particular form or
Mm,
expression of music, like in the studio. I'm sure often in the yoga studio, for example, there is a speaker setup, so it's not people listening to their own music in their own device, but it's rather a shared experience. So
yeah,
yeah, that's another reason why like a PA is super important before you actually release something.
yeah. What do you or what is the dojo thing? Like what is that like is that like a website, a course? Like what?
Yeah, it's the there is a a Discord and a website and a whole community of electronic musicians. I
Oh.
think it would, yeah, it's the electronic music part of my bio, which
Mm.
goes hand in hand with the production part. I feel like some of the best producers these days are in the electronic music genre, because a lot of it, for better or worse, is a competition in loudness. But if you learn how to do loudness well, then you can be quiet too. And dynamics are super important for our type of music, where it being very quiet is necessary, but also building energy over time is very important too. So um, I learned a lot from the dojo about how to just hear better, hear what um the different like extremes of sound. So you may have like a left or right panned music, um that that is obvious, but some things that are less obvious are maybe how much reverb is on a particular voice, and so where does that put it in the stereo or the front to back spectrum.
Mm.
So something with more reverb might sound farther away because you're hearing all the reverberations off the walls before you're hearing the transient sound, the loud sound. So if you got a lot of reverb on something, it's going to sound distant. And I use a lot of reverb in teas, and it sounds kind of this distant sort of atmosphere where nothing's really that close to you. But I think that sort of helps the vibe and what I was
Mhm.
trying to accomplish there.
What do you mean by a competition in loudness? I'm curious.
Yeah, so um at the ending stage of releasing an electronic dance music song, usually sometimes you'll put a limiter on it to try to get to a certain amount of LUFS minus, let's say, -7 LUFS. And that's just a good barometer for loudness these days. I think Spotify only really allows like -14 LUFS, but who knows what the next platform will allow you to master to a specific level at. So -7 LUFS would just be, that'd be pretty loud. You would hear that at the smallest volume on your computer. You would still hear that in your
And that's not like, isn't, I guess my assumption about those the companies were that they were kind of I'm losing my word, but equalizing
mhm.
like loudest volume for every track kind of thing. You wouldn't have something that was louder than something else, even if you like it. Or is there not some sort of process that's done so that it's not all these different volumes, or are you talking about something different?
Yeah, there is that does happen. So on Spotify, it wouldn't matter if you mastered to -7 LUFS, which is actually louder than -14 LUFS.
Okay.
Um, so, um, so, but when people are DJing, often they buy the tracks,
Okay, so
so
this
there
would be like
won't
a higher
be,
quality
yeah,
track.
there may not be that company that's normalizing everything. It's up to the DJ to either have uh, a red line that's, nothing's going high, like a ceiling, and then
Yeah.
that's up to the DJ, I think, to sort of determine how loud. And I guess the DJ and the sound guy in the sound booth, it's up to them to how loud the tracks are gonna play. But they're usually purchased tracks, so there's no company that's normalizing them.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And and we often hear louder as better. If it sounds louder or more impactful might be a better way of putting it than better, but you'll
Gotcha.
definitely hear it.
But we are talking about volume as opposed to like density of sound.
Well, that's an interesting point that I learned from the dojo too, and that is you can get really loud with fewer, you can get louder with fewer instruments. The
Hmm.
more instruments that you have, um, the the quieter the whole track is going to be, to get to the same amount of LUFS, roughly speaking. Uh, I'm not sure exactly why that is, but
Is it because they're
I think it
canceling
has,
out each other's
could
frequency?
be, yeah, yeah. It could be some frequency cancellation, some phasing, but also there's less going on, and I think it makes the algorithm a little bit more clean. It's a cleaner implementation of the algorithm for that to have those. Well, that being said, I'm coming at this all from just kind of a surface understanding of how LUFs are actually measured. So I don't know. I should look that up and kind of figure out the science behind that. But
We'll have a part
I,
two and you can do a lecture
okay,
on lefts.
okay,
I'm serious.
yeah, and that
You can come and chat about
I will
that.
be happy. I'll be happy to do that. I think that for, yeah, LUFS is relatively new too. It's not like a measurement that's been around for a while. I feel like all the new platforms, Spotify, Tidal, uh, Deezer, whatever, YouTube Music, Apple Music, um, they're all sort of requiring these on the fly, like, oh, we need to figure out how to make something sound good. Uh, and so we need new measurements that aren't just like peak loudness, because you could have one really loud sound and then, but the rest of your track is really quiet. And so there needs to be some way to average all that stuff out. I definitely know it's an average of some sort. I think it's called integrated LUFS or LUFS.
Okay.
and there might be like a short-term luff measurement too that I've seen.
Yeah, I've
Um,
never even heard of that. So I think, yeah, I would be interested to know about that. Do you find that you want to know, like, does it help you in your music making to understand these things more specifically, or are you content to sort of just know that they exist and be like, well, I know how to get the results that I want. I'm not gonna kind of get into the weeds on this particular topic, or do you like to like really, understand?
I like to not let in terms of my music creation, I don't really let it bog me down too much. I try to know the rules so that I can justify why I broke them in certain instances. For example, one of the one of the one of the rules of the dojo is kind of like have a main singer.
Oh,
Even if
okay.
that's like even if that's like I don't want to use the word rule, but one of the suggestions is have a focus, focus your mix. And I think in the dance realm, like that's super important because you do want to have a focus, and that main character does sort of the onus is on that main character to tell the story, or collection of main characters who switch off focus. But in spiritual music, it's less important, and in fact, I would say like maybe um, there should be times where there's not a main focus.
Hmm.
Even if that like not maybe not the whole track, but there should be some quiet, and and silence is an instrument in itself too.
Hmm. I like that. Yeah. Um, I that's also new to me actually, is calling the instruments characters. That makes a lot of sense because they're not always recognizable instruments, I guess. Is that why you use that term?
Yeah, right. Because in the synth world, it's hard to label what a sound is. I mean, it took me a long time to understand what people were talking about when they were mentioning like a Reese bass, um, like a growl. If you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, I've heard that before in these crazy EDM songs. But
Okay.
it took me a while to understand what those were, and they are characters. They really do play a role, and they really get and they have almost an archetype in themselves. So there is kind of like a language that has been hard for me to crack. Honestly, I'm I find it difficult to make an EDM song. I learn a lot from the dojo, but I just can't can't seem to solve that puzzle, and that's okay. I don't think it necessarily is the kind of music that I gravitate towards either. So um, but I think it's good to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and try some new things. So I've been trying that out, and uh, nothing but positive results from it, especially just with like reflection on like previous work,
Hmm.
teas, and and then when I go back and listen to my first album, I hear a lot of the stuff I was trying to do, um, but that was preventing me from really, I think, delivering the message that I wanted to. Um, part of part of writing a story is figuring out what doesn't need to be in it, and it can when you put a lot of effort into like writing a guitar part that might work but doesn't really work. That's the hardest one. When you know it's bad, it's easy to cut it, but when it's kind of good but not that good, and you try to like, but you spend a lot of time doing it, sometimes you just gotta let like cut your losses. That
Yeah.
can be hard.
Yeah, I hear you. What is the message, do you think, that you're conveying in your music, when because it seems like you know what you don't want to be saying? Has that gotten you kind of closer to discovering what it is you are saying or want to be saying, or what do you think T's said? Is that a fair question?
Sure, it's a great question. Um, I I think that music says a lot of things to a lot of people in different ways. But the one underlying constant is the relationship between the sounds in the song. So that that is kind of what I focus on, is the rhythm. I think rhythm is what I focus on. Rhythm and melody are super important to me, more important than sound choice, which I think in today's world can be it can be tricky, because to me a lot of sounds sound good to me, but then other people hear them and they're like, that sounds muddy and washed out, and they use all these adjectives that I'm like, oh, I hear what you're saying, and um and that's an interesting take, and you're probably right objectively, and that's how you're hearing my music. Um so just learning that, just recognizing the fact that there are some, you could say everything is subjective, and what sounds good to one person is fair, and that's totally true, but it might not reach as many people from an objective standpoint, or it might not be as popular, you know.
Mm.
And I think a lot of that these days comes from sound choice, things that sound novel, or are just very very, I don't want to say like loud in the visual sense, almost like ostentatious, like the kind of that is one area where I know I don't really want to go. So I focus teas down, and one of the constants with my music is um, rhythm and melody. Like they're just, and harmony, kind of like the classical approach. That's where the classical approach sort of falls into place, where I really like the interplay between um, the different frequency ranges and the different rhythms that are playing in those frequency ranges. So the the question that you asked was about teas specifically. It was something. I'm sorry, I lost the original question in its
It had something to do
form.
with what you thought it was saying, or what
Okay,
the
right,
message
right.
behind it was. Like what you were conveying through it, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I went through a big tangent there to try to get back to this point, which was um,
It's all good.
teas is kind of teas is kind of trying to take um I don't want to really use the word timeless, but I will. I'll say like an approach where these concepts um, that have been around in music and will last for forever because they're the essence of music, melody, rhythm, and harmony, where those are the focus as opposed to any particular sound. So the meaning of tease is to try to escape any particular uh, time frame and write music that will last and be interesting to others in the future. And the hope is that it is sort of like sound design agnostic, in the sense
Like,
that it doesn't really depend on what is like the newest synthesizer out, or what a cool sampler can accomplish. It is sort of electronic music that is where the relationships between the rhythm and the melody is sort of the focus. So yeah, it's basically saying that I want it to exist beyond any kind of specific synthesizer or sound that it might be made from.
I'm getting from this sort of a sense that, because you're talking about relationships and the story within the song, that would it be fair to say that you are conceptualizing of this song as a sort of microcosm in which the meaning has to do with what's going on inside that microcosm, as opposed to like how that sound relates to something out there?
Yeah, totally. That's a great way to put it. Thanks for clearing up what I think I was hinting at, but you said way more eloquently.
My partner and were joking about the term mansplaining because he was like, "Did I just mansplain you?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I sort of did that to you earlier. There's just not a word for it."
Yeah, fit. That's definitely
So
close to
what
the
you
truth
mean?
there. Um, but yeah, so I think another thing that I was trying to accomplish with Tease, which is sort of secondary, but that is sort of more permeates through most of my music, is an appeal to the non-material. So I'm kind of like an anti-materialist philosophically. I don't really think that we have really a good grasp on what reality actually is. I think we have five senses that we experience the world through, and animals have senses that are stronger than ours in different domains. Like I think cats can hear up to 192 kilohertz,
No, really.
which would be like we don't even know what that sounds like.
Is that loud or is that like a higher frequency than dogs? Huh,
Yeah,
and yet they
cats
don't ever have that like, what's that sound thing going on that dogs have when you do like a high whistle?
like a dog whistle, right? Yeah, I just read this recently. I think dogs have a lower high frequency threshold than cats, and then the highest is like bats. I think bats go really high too.
Oh, maybe it just doesn't bother them. Maybe it like bothers the dog, but it doesn't bother the cat.
Could very well be. I think um yeah,
That's
there's
sorry, but you
probably
had a
some.
point about that, I feel like, and I went off on. You were saying that animals have more or have more heightened senses than we have.
Yeah, I think as humans we or maybe in this post what was the name of the like 1700 scientific revolution? There's like a name for it. I don't remember, but
Like the age of
post new the Enlightenment. Yes, post
enlightenment.
Enlightenment.
There you go.
Yes. So so post Enlightenment, I think
The thing
a
that
lot of people.
supposedly happened, but that we're all still waiting for.
Right, right. We're also going to yoga to be enlightened, and thank
Sorry, go
goodness.
ahead.
um, I think that the scientific world it's easy to just think that that's all there is, and because tech does so much for us, uh, and I feel like science is like a new religion, and people are shying away from spiritual. This is very general, but I mean, some people are shying away from spiritual outlooks on life because it seems like almost uh, facetious to believe that maybe there's more than just like atoms and molecules and quantum mechanics and but I think that there's really like there's just so much that we don't know. We think we know so much about, oh, we just saw a black hole, and so now we have the whole cosmos mapped out. I don't know. I don't think that the materialism is going to give us all the answers, and somehow that connects to T's.
No,
But
I
it's just
get
one of the
it.
philosophy.
I get it. That, I mean, that experience of drinking tea is a very suspended in time kind of situation. People don't drink tea like they drink coffee, where they're like trying to accomplish this drinking of the coffee. I mean, in other countries it's
Yeah,
different, but in America, I think we
yeah,
have a
exactly.
relationship with coffee that's like, this is like the shot that I need to, produce. And actually,
Right.
Michael Pollan's book about caffeine is fascinating in that respect. Did you
Hmm.
read that? It's like a free
I
on
may have
Audible.
seen I may have seen something about that. Is he the one who took like a little break from it for a while and then came back? Or
Yes,
is that
yes.
okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw something about that and it was fascinating.
It's
Just
so crazy. He's basically like, we would not have, as a culture or as like as a civilization, we would not have produced anything if, anything intellectual, because
mhm.
we were drunk.
Oh, right. It became the new beverage of choice, right?
Right. Well, like
Gotta have
instead of
something.
instead of like being ideal, the beverage you're drinking being ideal for like manual labor and brainless sort of, you know, non-intellectual activity, which was how you build bridges and castles and things. Now people were like thinking, and they were able to stay up past their bedtime, and yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. Um, I'm certainly very appreciative of the modern technology that we have now because we can talk. And I
Totally.
mean, I'm a software developer, so like,
Are you? Okay.
yeah, that's what pays the bills right now. So um, yeah, I can't say I don't love my technology, but I think that it's dangerous. Not maybe not dangerous, but sure, I will say dangerous to put all to think that's all that there is maybe not dangerous, but a little. I think it's naive. I honestly think it's naive.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because if you look back not that long ago, all there is was not all that there is. So there was potential for more, which means that there's more invisible things being uncovered all the time or being created, right? So, like, there will never
Hmm.
be an all there is, because there's always going to be, we're always going to be discovering new things. And even if you're completely materialist, we're always going to be building new things, and that thing will not have existed yesterday, but it exists today. So what's doing that?
Yeah. Does everything have to have an explanation?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Like
go ahead.
that's kind of what tease is like. I don't know. It just kind of is a something that I made,
It
and
is.
it's just something that uh I think sounded good at the time, and um it is fun to talk about. I like I like thinking about those days because that was definitely a different. That was before I had kids,
Mm.
so that was a whole different music. I was a different musician back then, and different ideas of like um well purpose and stuff like that.
How old are your children now?
My daughter Julia is 3. She just had a birthday in December, and my youngest Genevieve is 1,
Oh,
and she just had her birthday last Wednesday.
nice. Yeah, I have two
Yeah,
as well. They're 9 and 6, and well, they will be 10 and 7. Yeah, it changes everything,
yeah, it does.
obviously. But yeah, there's so much right in the way that children see the world. Everything. we should be we should be reminding ourselves daily, because it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Nicholas, would you like to tell, who will be known as Nicholas, would you like to tell everyone how they can find out more about you, your music, stay in touch with you? I will have this as links in the show notes for people to click on as well.
Okay, awesome. Just wanted to first say thank you so much for the conversation. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for
And
doing this.
maybe we can do a second one if you're up I'll be down.
Yeah,
Um,
you can teach us all about, is it luffs?
yeah, I'll do my research.
I'm just kidding. You don't have to talk about luffs.
uh, my Spotify is Nicholas Bulka, and I'm sure it's also YouTube Music, all the major streaming platforms. You can find me under my name, Nicholas Bulka, and my Instagram, if you'd like to connect there, is also Instagram.com/Nicholas Bulka, NicholasBulka. Feel free to email me. Also, anyone who'd like to connect, feels particularly inspired by a song or just wants to ask me a question. My email is nicholasbulka@gmail.com.
Okie doke. I will have those for people to click or copy paste. Thank you so much for being willing to come and have a conversation with someone that you don't know. So I appreciate your bravery. And yeah, I will let you know when this comes out. And for everyone listening at home, thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast, y'all. Please like, subscribe, rate, comment, whatever the platform you listen to podcasts on offers you as a way to let its algorithm know that you're enjoying these episodes. That really helps. Also, there's some links in the podcast description notes that allow you to support the podcast in a way that benefits you and us. So please check those out. And if you'd like to stay in touch with me, you can sign up for my mailing list at portersinger.com. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye.